Okay, we are recording. Quiet on the set. All right, I'll start this off, then it's going to go Matt and Sue, and everything looks like it's working. Okay. Hi, I want to thank everybody for coming to the CALEXIT conference here, taped live in Hollywood, November 3rd, 2019. This is CALEXIT Conference 4.0, where we try to bring to the public people who are in the movement and the reasons why regular Californians want to do this. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that we are filming in Tovangar, or Tavangar. This is Tongva Gabrielino, depending on what group you're talking to, land, and this was the name that they had for the area that we are in today. So, acknowledging land for the indigenous. Now, the reason that we are having these CALEXIT conferences is to follow the strategy that was outlined by a very famous person here in California, Harvey Milk. He's one of our greatest civil rights heroes and just a peninsulan, I'm drawing a blank on the word, super awesome Californian. He was an immigrant from America, came here, and he found acceptance. And he truly loved this place. One of the things that Harvey Milk did was he fought for the LGBTQ movement. And one of the strategic things that he said was that people need to come out of the closet. Now, I'm not going to argue the history who started that phrase, but certainly Milk popularized it. And the reason that Harvey Milk said that it was so important for LGBTQ and gay men specifically to come out of the closet was to show that it was okay to be gay, and to show that there were so many people who were LGBTQ, and to show that everybody already knew a friend, a family member, a brother, a sister, a coworker, a business partner, whatever, who was LGBTQ. He was recognizing that a lot of people in California were LGBTQ, or had family, or business partners, or marriage partners, or some sort of relation, and they simply didn't know. And so it was easy for them to discriminate against LGBTQ and the topic of LGBTQ because people were not aware. Well, I'm sitting right next to someone who is. You know, are you okay talking that way about a certain group and people who feel a certain way when it's your daughter, your son, your husband, your friend, your business partner, your school teacher, your principal, the person who saved your life 15 years ago? And he goes, this is the way that we win. We normalize being LGBTQ by having people come out of the closet. He didn't come out and say, I did it, so I feel safer. You need to do it so that we can all feel accepting of this. And so the CALEXIT movement has officially adopted the strategy by Milk, in that we are having these conferences to show that regular Californians are interested in the idea of independence. We're not crazy. We're not insane. We're not radicals. We debate with each other. We disagree with each other. We're regular people from all walks of life. And 1/3 of Californians supported CALEXIT, and none of those people ever quit. They just stopped coming around. But no one ever said, oh, I don't think California could be a nation. You couldn't pull it off. Nobody ever did that. They just stopped coming around. There's still 1/3 of Californians who believe in this. And there was 47.5% Californians, according to Reuters Ipsos January 2017, who said they were willing to discuss the measure. By the way, that survey by Reuters Ipsos undercounted the Latino percentage of the population. When that survey was done, accurately reflecting the California composition of Latinos, the percentage of Californians who said they were open to discussing secession was 56%. Those people are still there. Nobody's changed their mind. And so we want to show that it is okay to express your opinion. Recently, we were talking with someone at the last conference who was afraid to show their face because they were afraid that they would be judged for even bringing up that they supported independence for California, legally and peacefully. Why is it wrong to say I support legal, peaceful separation using the existing governing structure? How's that make you a bad person? How's that wrong? Why can't you support that? Well, there are people today who are afraid to show their support because of that reason. And I'm supposed to believe all the talk about how we live in a democratic society with free press and free expression of ideas, and people are terrified to express how they think about something? Wrong. That has to be corrected. And as Californians, we will obviously have to take the lead. But the other reason why we have these conferences is to show two options. We are going to continue to prove to Californians that there's two things they need to know. One is that America's falling apart. It's not working anymore. And we are tied to that system. Every conference we bring up reasons why. We're going to do a lot of that today. So out of a sheer sense of survival, we want Californians to recognize you better be ready to have a lifeboat, I think is the phrase a lot of us accept here. The other thing is that we want to point out that America will vote you out. You know, we constantly have conferences with conservatives. We had one today. We had one every conference. And we're talking to conservatives, and they're saying, yeah, if you want to go, you have the votes. I don't know who told you that you wouldn't be allowed to go. Well, it was the California News. Said you never get the votes. Every conservative we talk to at these CALEXIT conferences shows the exact opposite thing of what the news said. I'll leave it to you to explain how the news in California could be so wrong about that point. So we're going to exemplify that to survive California, you must become independent. And we're going to exemplify that if you want to be part of America, recognize that most of America does not like you because of the way you are. And the election isn't going to change that. They don't like diversity, immigrants, people speaking Spanish, you name it. That's who we are. We're not going back. We're not changing. We're going to be like this forever. So guess what? They're forever not going to like you. Get it through your head. And if you add on the fact that, hey, do you want to have a future for your children, your grandchildren, where they're safe and where they can have values protected for them? Don't count on getting that from America. With that, we're going to talk about the historical significance of today's date. We picked the conference for November 3rd because California was actually an independent nation for many years before any Americans illegally came in. Yes, the first Americans were what's called today illegal immigrants who violently took it over. But before that, California was independent from Mexico. We were an independent nation, and we were occupied and taken over. And we'd like to return to that independence. And you see that red star on the California flag? Matt Owens is going to explain the historical significance of that. And I think you'll be a little bit surprised. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, to begin with, originally our very first independence struggle was as Mexicans from Spain, which was won in 1821. Well, there was a kind of a empire that somebody thunk up in Mexico City. It didn't last long. By 1824, Mexico was a federal republic, Los Estados Unidos Mexicanos, directly modeled on the United States. And there it remained for a number of years. A great deal of progress was made under that federal republic. Our second Mexican president, Vicente Guerrero, in 1829 abolished slavery. Unfortunately, he was martyred a short time after. And the Texans, some of those illegals you were hearing about, wanted to bring their slaves in and have them remain slaves. And they weren't happy with the fact that in 1829, slavery was abolished in the Mexican Federation. But we continued to make progress. In 1833, the decree was issued which secularized the missions, okay? It got rid of the mission system by which California was colonized by the Spaniards, and the indigenous people were reduced to serfdom. Okay, so that was gotten rid of. And so there's all that mission land up for grabs. There were two distinct schools of thought. One was people that coveted the land, and we had plenty of those, particularly in Southern California. We had Pico, we had Sepulveda, yeah, those streets. We had Lugo, we had Bandini. They wanted the land for themselves and their buddies. But there was another school of thought issuing from the territorial capital of Monterrey, championed by Juan Bautista Alvarado, Jose Castro, Mariano Vallejo and others, that said the land that was stolen from the indigenous should be returned to the indigenous. And they began the fight. This is 1833. Well, there was a change of government in the Efe, in the Mexican Republic. And there was a gentleman, I use the word advisedly, of Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, and he issued forth the Siete Leyes, the 7 laws. And one of those, Law 6, abolished Mexican federalism. We all became dependencies to be appointed, our governors became dependencies to be appointed by Santa Anna. And he wanted to declare martial law by the means of, was it like a military coup? Because he wanted to make the military zone commanders of each Mexican state into their governors. Okay, so he wanted to subject Mexico to military rule. And here we said not only no, but hell no. Because our military zone commanders were us, were Vallejo, were Alvarado, were Castro. And they said, this is not happening. So Santa Anna had already imposed a governor by the name of Gutierrez, who was so inept that we said, we're getting rid of you. And so the troops who were loyal to Santa Anna through Gutierrez were besieged by us. During the night of November 3rd, this night, our troops gathered, and amongst them were some rifleros led by Isaac Graham, who came up with this battle flag. And the cause of the indigenous was so well known that Vallejo and Alvarado managed to go to the Suizunes, which were only about 1,000 at the time, and convinced their leader, Semieto, to ask for volunteers. 100 Suizunes volunteered and were in our troops. So we headed down and we told them the following when we began besieging them on the day of 4th November. Californios, history favors us. Undoubtedly you are its select few, and this is why you are guided propitiously to happiness. You might have been until now the unfortunate beings of civil factions, whose leaders, satisfied with a passing triumph, pressed you to the limit of your docility and sufferings. You swore solemnly to be free or perish rather than be slaves. Your government was organized at the expense of many sacrifices that unnaturalized sons found convenient to amass their fortunes and to develop their criminal tendencies. So that when it seemed to you, you were a certain patrimony for the tyrant plutocrats, certainly, and their corrupt political servants. You waved the banner of the free and said, freedom or death is the Californian's fate. Thus you have exclaimed, and this is so patriotic cry will forever be firmly engraved in our hearts, where the eternal and sacred flame of love of country burns. You have tasted the sweet nectar of liberty, and you will not share it with impunity, with a bitter cup of oppression. And now I updated the speech to pertain to today.
All right.
Great. California is free. It will cut off all relations with the United States until liberty, justice, and authentic democracy triumph in our parent country. In order to accomplish such a grandiose and interesting purpose, all the inhabitants of this ground must unite and form one single party, one single mind, one single country. Be unanimous, Californians. You will be invincible if you employ all the available resources at your disposal. Only proceeding in this manner can we prove to the world we are firm in our convictions and we are free. We prefer death to slavery. Viva California! Viva California! Viva California!
Okay, Sue.
It's biannual. It's the same as the two. So I could tell you all the reasons that we need to CALEXIT now and symbolically turn our backs on America. And this missed being that speech by a fraction of a decimal point. This was going to be that speech until I realized that California is already halfway out the door, and we never should have been in the door in the first place. Matt and Hannah can tell you how we were annexed without our say, so I'm going to leave that to them. That's history lessons, and they're exceptionally good at history lessons. I'm going to tell you how we're halfway out the door with our collective backs, excuse me, turned to the United States, and our eyes fixed firmly where they've always been, on progress. For example, we entered into a cap-and-trade agreement with Canada in 2013 for the sake of the planet. And Trump is now telling his lawyers, just now, that, and the rest of the world, that we're doing it to spite him.
Right.
Well, defying Trump is always going to be a really fun bonus. Not everything is about him, much to his chagrin. Don't tell him that. The planet doesn't care how much money he has or how many American tax dollars he wastes going golfing in Mar-a-Lago. And considering that he spends so little time or no time working for the good of the American people, why do we here in California still support him with our tax dollars? We're smarter than that. So maybe this speech is about why we need to get out now. Maybe it's about how there are a million better ways we can be spending our tax dollars on California's affordable housing, on California's infrastructure, on California's educational and healthcare systems. The current regime has proved its love of profit over people with all its cuts to welfare programs like food stamps and heating assistance for the elderly. And it stopped sending clean bottled water to Flint and swept sloppy water treatment policies under the rug, along with aid to Puerto Ricans still suffering the aftermath of the latest hurricane. A government that commits such crimes against humanity.
You got this. You got this.
Is no government to me. I turn my back. The leader of the current administration had a clever solution for California. When she was suffering in the wake of wildfires caused by a monopoly's complacency in their work, he suggested that we rake our forests. Such a callous creature is no leader to me. I turn my back. His travel bans hurt Americans' tourism and hospitality's industry, especially here in California. Partially building an expensive and topographically ridiculous wall only hurt American taxpayers. To his credit, the wall was probably built on land covered by $13 million of California crops left rotting in the fields because of his travel bans and deportations of our workers. Yeah. I say that a leader that would make war on his own country's economy is no leader. I say that the U.S. owes us that $13 million in tax refunds, plus what we lost in tourism dollars during what came to be known as the Trump slump. Now Trump has turned his back not just on dozens of subgroups of the American people, but also on our Kurdish allies in Syria.
You got this.
Excuse me.
You're doing great.
Morality requires that we turn our backs on a government that would turn its back on our allies within our borders and beyond them. James Otis, an activist who helped the U.S. to become independent of England and went on to become a brilliant lawyer and politician, put it like this: "There shall be no more tyranny." A handful of men cannot seize power over thousands. A man shall choose who it is shall rule over him. We give all we have, lives, property, safety, skills. We fight, we die for a simple thing, only that a man can stand up. Many here have put their lives in harm's way that a man can stand up. They have been at protests against fascism. They have banged pots outside the homes of ICE directors. They have been warriors against the very tyranny of which James Otis spoke. It is my honor to be among Californians who are so committed to common goals that they have put aside differences of heritage, gender identity, religion, color, age, ability, or ethnicity. You heroic warriors who are leading by example will be the true founders of the nation of California.
Yes.
Hey,
It is we who must unite Californians across petty and imagined boundaries. Because across our California national line, instead of useful policy making, U.S. politicians talk about how the only good HIV positive person is a dead one. That came out of the mouth of Representative Betty Price.
know what she's representing.
She represents the Republican Party of Georgia. It defies belief that such ignorant hate-mongering vitriol could come from the mouth of someone of the human race. It's not normal. It must not be accepted as such. It should convince us all to turn our backs on such a body of so-called leaders and allow ourselves to be inspired by the great leaders within our own community. The Republican Party led by Trump has gone beyond hate-mongering. It has become notorious for condoning violence and acts of Cold War against many subgroups, including women, by denying women access to abortion and even information about abortion in many states. I turn my back on any who would cause that kind of dehumanization of others, against any who would dehumanize others in such a way. I turn my back on them. The current U.S. immigration policies that separate the cage asylum-seeking families will someday be known as the war crimes of America, the way Germany calls the Holocaust, not the Holocaust, but war crimes of Germany. I turn my back on such a xenophobic cacostocracy. Excuse me. As Californians in good conscience, can we sanction Betty Price's kind of hate speech?
No!
Across California's national line, they impose religion on politics to justify their misogyny and xenophobia. Do we sanction that?
No!
On the other side of our national line, religion dictates the politics regarding the civil rights of our LGBTQAI communities and many others. Do we sanction that, California?
No!
Their government is deporting the immigrant workforce that has always enriched and boosted the entire American economy. Do we sanction that?
No!
The answer is no. This is why CALEXIT has begun. We're a donor state. Our produce, beef, dairy, and tax dollars support the U.S. and much of the rest of the world. If we kept those tax dollars in California, we could house and feed our own citizens indefinitely.
Yeah.
Hey,
Believe it or not, California liberation will be fairly easy. Hannah can tell you when I stop talking how we can take our case to the UN and legally call ourselves a nation of unrecognized peoples. Plenty of people in the red states truly believe also that they would be better off with California out of the Union. And we're so confident that California will be liberated in the near future that we've started to create the kind of relationships with our indigenous brothers and sisters that the U.S. could never even dream of having on our most enlightened days. The U.S. committed deliberate and systematic genocide against them. breaking every one of its almost 600 treaties that it proposed and wrote. And they forced the survivors onto resource-poor reservations and turned their backs on them. They continue to break those treaties to this day. For the sake of my Indigenous brothers, I turned my back on them. Liberating California will also mean freer trade with other countries, which will benefit the rest of the world as well as California.
Right.
California can catalyze a world revolution against fascism, but to do that, we have to show them how to stand up, shed tyranny, and create something better. If you will stand up and pledge with me now to lead the way to such a nation, then you are the founders of a new nation of California. Will you stand with me as true founders of the nation of California?
Yes.
Hey!
Will you turn your backs on the U.S. with me?
Yes!
Will you turn your backs on all fascism with me?
Yes!
Then let our battle cry ring out for the world to hear, that they will know that the nation of California is born this day, November 3rd of 2019. Viva California!
Libre!
Viva California!
Libre!
Viva California!
Libre!
Before you go, Sue,
Yes.
hold it. Give her the flag to hold up.
Viva California!
Libre!
Viva California!
Libre!
Viva California!
Libre!
Perfect.